Hello, hello, hello. This is Adrienne Obi, Capricorntigress of Astrology, a look inside. And I thought I would just come really quick and do something a little bit different than what I normally do. And this is because I have this urge to just do a little bit of quick study on some of these degrees. Earlier today, I did a video and I was talking about where some of these degrees were. And I was, well, first of all, I was amazed that we had several planets that were at 24 degrees of Pisces. And I think I might have read 24 degrees of Pisces, but if I haven't, I'll do that now. And Mercury is at 24 degrees today because it's retrograding, but it's sitting right at the sun as of today. So I'm going to go ahead and read that so that anyone who is dealing with this is aware. I will also say that this is making an exact trine to the North Node in Cancer at 24 degrees as well. So I will be also reading 24 degrees for Cancer. These are, for some reason, really faithful degrees today. So we're going to talk about these. So the 24 degrees of Pisces, let's start with that because both the Sun and Mercury are there. 24 degrees. This degree is also well, it's in the Scorpio Decandi. It revolves around the subject of sex. Whether puritanical or lustful, or anything in between. These natives may also be involved with establishing new moral codes of sexual behavior. The subject will be dealt with all the strengths and weaknesses of Pisces. Some of these natives are very self-indulgent, in other ways binding with love rather than brute force. It was Gandhi who said, "There is hope for the slave of the brute, but none for the slave of love." Natives of this degree may enslave through love, including sexual power over someone who is vulnerable. That's interesting. I did notice that Mercury is almost at 23 degrees because it's retrograding. And so since it's almost there, I thought I would also read 23 degrees of Pisces since it will be affecting some of us for a couple of days or so. So 23 degrees of Pisces indicates a psychic awareness that is there, and it's often used for material gain or an advantage that could spell ruin. The natives are aware of material desires and psychic powers. Perhaps the 40 days Jesus spent in the wilderness best illustrates what these people go through. There have been few who have met this challenge in such a way that they could go on to better things. Most of them feel the insecurity of certain material means to provide for their physical comforts, and that they do not have sufficient Piscean faith to sustain their walking. Oh, they're walking an open, honest, and honorable path. So if you have 23 degrees of Pisces, be aware of this. Most find it impossible to resist the temptation this degree puts out. Invariably, their lives end up disastrously because of the mirages they believe in. There is indeed severe testing here, and the world has offered little help as to the real values that are at stake. In fact, the world cheers him to make the wrong choices and then leaves him to his fate. There are indeed a few who have made good choices and reaped a comparable reward. Being the Scorpio Decandi, I always say that wrong, makes this struggle more severe. So I would be cautious of doing anything sneaky, underhanded, or anything of that nature over the next few days. And I'm going to look at 24 degrees of Cancer because it just got into that. The North Node is going to be sitting there for a few. 24 degrees of Cancer. The native here is concerned with mastery. So usually there's mastery over others. It has to do with mastering over others without first having gained mastery over self. I can relate to this. Because there's sometimes I can see things for other people, but then I turn around and I'm still affected by that my own self. That's what they mean. This degree grants much ability to overcome all obstacles as well as other people. In most cases, there is too little compassion and straightforward honesty. The native seems prone to gain by any means, fear, fair or not. So here, this theme is permeating into this as well. This is another just hook or crook, getting what I want type of situation. So I would be careful of using any foul means to get what you want. He is independent and extremely determined to reach the top of his goal. He has been considered successful in the past and when he gained mastery over all that he surveyed. Today, it is necessary for him to incorporate some of the advancement of society in the art of give and take to find the recognition he craves. Much depends on his circle of friends and what is determined or demanded of him. In a sense, this degree speaks for what those around him demand. He can be and will incorporate the qualities necessary to maintain his position. The rest of the chart will also point the natural direction to which this native may be oriented. If he is unable to obtain the recognition he desires in the direction he wishes to go, he will go in the direction his environment demands. Wow, interesting. One of the other slow-moving planets I wanted to go into today was Jupiter. I think I've talked about Jupiter already, but let me just make sure because it's at 23 degrees. We talked about this 23 degrees already. I think so. But if not, I'm going to go ahead and read it now because that's what I'm doing. Sagittarius is at, Jupiter's at 23 degrees. And here it says that jealousy and suspicion predominates. There's paranoia here. They're extremely watchful and suspicious. He watches minutely the actions of the one he loves the most, looking for details to prove lack of devotion and infidelity. He drives those he loves from him by his constant insecurity. He suffers much from lack of response from those he seeks to love. They invariably misplace their affections to start with. They seek out those that are least likely to respond. Both men and women end up by confiding and attaching themselves to those who are unresponsive and malicious. At the same time, they are generous and make many childlike attempts to be overly helpful. They sometimes have an interest in geological and mineralogical researches and may even choose their occupation from this area. They are likely to suffer heart ailments. Many of the problems come from relationships with the opposite sex, and they may be fairly capable of getting along with other people to whom they complain bitterly about their miserable situation. Wow. Yeek. Sheesh. Wow. Okay. Can't wait for that to move on to the next spot. Jupiter. Yeah. Sad part is Jupiter hangs in a spot for a while. At least weeks, sometimes months at a time. So, yeesh. Next, we're going to look at Saturn. I think we've done this already as well. Saturn at 18 degrees, but I'll go ahead and read it. Authorities seem to agree that there is no good to be found here. Lying is the most pronounced sin. Cowardly, gambling, quarrelsome, belligerent, and very much at odds with society and everyone around him. Naturally, this kind of behavior attracts very great problems of all kinds. Well, kiss me again, that's not good. And here's the thing. It's about to go to 19 degrees, as though 19 degrees is better. I'm not sure, because it says that at 19 degrees of Capricorn, this is degree of Pluto's south node. At least it was when the time this book was made. Anyway, the typical trait of this degree is the ability of the natives to take a solid stand in face of all odds. There's much to suggest the influence of Pluto more on the positive than negative side. And there is a strong explosive element. It may cause him to act out and turn prematurely, out of turn, act out of turn prematurely. Also, he may rely on force sooner than necessary, and where force may not even be called for. He sets his course and will hold it whether or not the crowd follows. He will pursue this course with undisturbed calm. He is stoical in the stance that he takes. He is easier to kill than to overcome. When he wins, he is controlled by valor and integrity and will not take undue advantage of a defeated foe. He may be associated with mining, which is also characteristic of Pluto. These natives may go far because of their ability, which is supported by an original mind and broad creative abilities. There is strong respect for truth and honesty and has the courage of his convictions and will stand alone if necessary. Well, that is a very interesting degree. Very interesting. Next, I want to take a look at Uranus because Uranus, is at a fate degree because it's at 0 degrees of Taurus. Almost 1 degree, but not quite. So it's 0 degrees. This is a blending of Aries and Taurus in a less desirable fashion. There's stubbornness of Taurus, directed to establishing the ego. And in doing so, it alienates those around him. So he's left to carry this burden alone. And there's a strong tendency for men to be misled by a woman, usually because of his desire to possess her and make her subservient to his own ego. In most cases, he desires and attracts someone extremely selfish and difficult to deal with. He seems not to be able to dissociate himself and pursue his course alone. This is even greater threat if that man's moon or Venus falls on this degree. At any rate, it is the stubborn desire to establish his own ego, irrespective of others, which causes the insurmountable trouble that this degree will figure well into the women's liberation movement, especially the more militant groups. In a woman's chart, this degree may spell trouble also because of her feelings of subservience to men in general. There is no doubt that there is a battle of the sexes, and it has strong roots in this degree. Success depends on the resolution in this area. And, wow. I'm going to read 1 degree of Taurus too, because we're at almost midway of 0 degrees. It's going to be a while, I think, because Uranus moves very slowly. So we may not get to this degree for another month or so. But it's maybe, a couple of months, but because it spends a lot of time on each degree when it's in Uranus. But 1 degree of Taurus is, this degree is not a decisive degree, but it is strong, and it gives strong will, and it gives a desire to protect the ego at all costs. And there's also a capacity for cruelty. Self-preservation is the basic quality. And when the self is not threatened, the individual may relax, and this degree will then be free to develop along other lines, generally consistent with the chart as a whole. But it's possible that the native could also be sensitive, and that even when the self was free from threat, defensiveness would be uppermost. And until this tendency is overcome, there is not much hope of success. There is much ability, both with mental and physical. And we'll look at Neptune, which is at 16 degrees of Pisces. I think I read this before, but I'm not sure. No, I don't think I have. This degree is located in the middle of Cancer decanate of Pisces, and it seems to pick up the Cancer-like love and devotion to home. Natives here may be overprotective of those in the home circle and very defensive toward anyone else who might pose a threat. One who enters this home until he has been thoroughly checked out. Oh, no one enters his home until he's been thoroughly checked out. They are likely to be involved in family enterprise in which they try to keep their children also under its protection. His suspiciousness may cause him to be disliked by others also, unless there are other factors to soften his relationships with so-called outsiders. Should he work with a larger group with whom he could establish an identity, he could adopt a similar approach here of protectiveness. The larger the circle he is co well, able to include, the more this influence would be softened. He may, however, be frustrated if the tendency is sufficiently deep-seated so he is unable to relax and find outsiders with this circle he trusted too soon. Wow, interesting. And finally, I want to look at this Capricorn. We're at 22 degrees of Capricorn right now. That's where Pluto is at the moment. So I want to take a good look at this 22 degrees. This says here, there's a close attraction to the earth from this degree. Natives here are often involved with agriculture or mining. Have you picked up about the mining aspect that's going on right now? I'm just saying, if anyone is into like gold digging or gold mining or hunting for like gems and stuff with the little gold finders, this would obviously be a good time to do it, because I picked it up in 3 or 4 of the meanings of these long transits. And so definitely mining. There is also an ability to work hard for long periods of time. There is also the spiritual core, which may take him along more occult lines of study. There is a keen and sharp mind, eager for knowledge, interested in difficult problems and situations. There are abilities which would contribute greatly to detective work, although this area is usually not sufficiently broad to attract these people. They are interested in dead languages, deciphering hieroglyphs, and working with difficult symbols. They may be drawn to archaeology and the resurrections of buried cultures. He has a strong and forceful character which will take him wherever he wishes to go. He usually has a strong sense of direction and the patience to get where he is going. He has a measure of luck to bolster his own inborn abilities. Wow, interesting, very interesting. So I just felt a need to go over those long-term influences, because they affect us all, and they affect us all long-term. And so take out of these long-term influences what you can. And if any of these long-term influences are affecting you directly, or like your angles or any of your planets, then definitely pay close attention to those explanations. Okay, well, this has been Capricorntigress of Astrology, a look inside. And if you haven't, please stop by and like, share, and subscribe our videos here at Astrology, a look inside on YouTube. And then also stop by and subscribe to our website and blog at astrologyalookinside.com. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/astrology, a look inside. Much love and much light to you all. Bye now.